Hello and welcome to the MS for Mama podcast. I'm your host, Abby Halberstadt, happy wife, mama to 10, Bible-believing Christian. And I have one of my favorite people in the world on the podcast today. My daughter, Della, will be joining me to answer some of your burning questions about what it's like to be in a big family. And I thought it would be a perfect follow-up for a podcast after Ruth Ann and I talked about teenagers last week. Before we dive into that conversation with Della, I want to highlight a couple of podcast sponsors for you. These are, as always, companies that I feel confident with partnering with and know that you'll benefit from as well. So thank you for supporting them. First up is Your Tinkler. They are a research-proven program to help women reclaim strength and dignity in their pelvic floor health. And they do this without Kegels, without surgery, and without devices in just 10 minutes a day. If the thought of being able to run without leaking or laugh or sneeze without having to cross your legs is appealing to you, you should definitely take their 5-minute pelvic floor health quiz to see if their program is right for you. You can also use the code MAMA50 for $50 off of their registration price at checkout at tightenyourtinkler.com. You need to know that your body was designed to heal. That's tightenyourtinkler.com. I also want to remind you about Voetberg Music Academy. They are celebrating 10 years this year. They really know what they're doing in this online music space, and they are making their lessons even more accessible to you with coaching calls, online weekly lessons, and access to their vibrant VMA community where you can find people that are learning music just the way you are and interact. And all of this for less than $30 a month when you use my code MSForMama20 for 20% off each month that you're enrolled. Think about it. You can take commuting to music lessons off your to-do list, share lessons in fiddle, guitar, piano, ukulele, and mandolin between siblings for that same low price, and have the confidence that your kids will not only want to learn, but will learn well. Use the code MSForMama20 at checkout at VoetbergMusicAcademy.com. And last but not least, I want to remind you about Summit Ministries. You know our family loves and has benefited from Summit Ministries by sending our 2 oldest boys so far to their camps in Georgia and Colorado. And you can too, or avail yourself of their online options for ages 13 to 25 and helping your kids learn how to have a biblical foundation and speak the truth in love. Use the code MAMA26 for up to $500 off in-person sessions at summit.org/mama. Okay, we are about to dive into that conversation with Della, but I do want to give, if not a disclaimer, at least a heads up that there are listeners who have different preferences of the level in which I participate in interviews. So some people would prefer that I ask questions and the other person answers and that's it. Some people prefer that it be a conversation. Some people prefer a mix of the two. And that is definitely what I am aiming for when I have a guest on. But keep in mind that this is my 15-year-old daughter who has never been on a podcast before. And she does an excellent job. In fact, it was so cute because her older brother, Ezra, who edits and produces my podcast, sent her a text when he finished editing this the other day and said, "Great job, Della. You did a really good job. Proud of you." And she was just beaming. So there's no doubt that she does a wonderful job, but she's still not a full-grown adult. It's not her podcast and it's not her job to carry it. So just keep in mind if I'm interjecting or I'm taking moments to clarify an issue for the moms out there, that is really what I felt my role was in this podcast, in addition to posing the questions that you guys submitted for her so that she could answer them in her own words, which she does very eloquently and very well. So just so that you have that format in mind for this particular podcast, that might be helpful to you, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, friends, I have a very, very fun show for you. I convinced my daughter, Della, that it would be a good idea to do a show together, and it really didn't take that much convincing, actually.
I'm ready to talk.
She's ready to talk. And I thought this show would be perfect to come on the heels of the conversation that Ruth Ann Zimmerman and I had about teenagers last week, and just kind of bring that conversation, if not full circle, at least a little more forward by adding an actual teenager's opinion and viewpoint. So yes, this is my daughter, Della.
Hello.
She is 15 years old and she is number 3 in our lineup of kids. She's the oldest girl. And I mentioned the other week that I might have her on, and there was a very enthusiastic response of yes, and lots of questions that were submitted. So Della and I took a gander at some of the questions and decided on some to answer. And I'll start with one that relates to what I just said. A lot of people wanted to know what it's like to be the oldest girl of a group of 10 siblings. And I will say that almost all of the questions had to do with how she felt about having so many siblings. So
I get this question a lot. So yeah. How do I feel about being the oldest girl? I mean, like, relating to my sisters or like my entire family?
well, I think the assumption and sometimes the full-blown stereotype is that the oldest girl will carry the most responsibility with chores and taking care of siblings. I will personally weigh in here and say that I don't actually think that that's true.
Yes. I do not feel like I fit that stereotype much. I feel like oftentimes an oldest daughter is like someone who's very like calm and collected and does everything and like takes care of her siblings. And I do have some responsibilities that are similar to that, but I don't think it's the full-blown stereotype of like I'm doing all the work and I'm always, taking care and keeping people in line and taking the blame for everything. I don't think it's like that at all. And I don't think my personality fits that really either.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are assuming that in situations where there are large families, that we don't take your personality into consideration. That's the stereotype. It's not that everybody says that this is true. And most of the questions, if not all of them, were fairly respectfully worded and didn't seem like they were trying to insinuate that she should feel put upon or like the oldest daughter syndrome was something to be dreaded. But I do think that there are a lot of kind of tropes that go along with big families that would imply that, regardless of your natural personality, we were going to force that on you.
Yeah, I do not feel that way at all. I feel like Abby and Nola are more that way than I am, personality wise. But there are some times when I'm going to be the one in charge if they're like gone on a trip or something because I am the oldest daughter. So I hold more responsibility that way. But it's not like I have everything placed upon me.
Well, and to clarify, Della has never ever been in charge while we're gone on a trip in her life. She means she might be one of the children that's the most in charge.
Yes.
While there is also an adult there.
Yes. Yes.
Just to clarify, for the sake,
I'm the leader of the circus.
or simply that there was not an adult present. There definitely is. And then, I mean, just segueing from that, actually, I'll back up and say, I wondered what your response to that would be, because I mean, we talked about some of these questions, but I'm not like, you have to say this. I'm like, say whatever you want. But I agree with you. I think Nola, who is the third girl, is the most what people associate with being the eldest daughter. And it is her personality. She absolutely loves like getting up before co-op on co-op mornings.
Making all the lunches.
She'll make lunches for her siblings without being asked. She's in no way required to do this. I mean, there might be a morning when I'm like, hey, Nola, throw together a lunch for Shiloh. We're running late. But it's not like a requirement of her life to make her siblings lunches. But she will. She'll have my lunch made. She'll be handing me like, here's your water. Here's your, here's your vitamins. Here's your things as we go out the door. She'll come back in and check on me. That's very much so.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Della's just over here vibing.
I feel like I'm more creative rather than productive. I do sometimes enjoy like, making food for people and like having that like feeling of like I've accomplished something, I'm a caretaker, but I'm much more inclined to want to create a story or draw or I don't know, watch a movie or something that would be more fun to me.
Well, and that's all true. And I recognize that as part of your personality, but, and we'll get into this more a little bit later, as much as we do pay attention to your personalities and don't just immediately say, okay, well, regardless of your personality, this is the role you must take on. There are also responsibilities that everyone in this house is required to participate in to the degree that they're able. And Della does. So I think she's selling herself a little short. She said she sometimes makes people food. She's actually quite the gourmet, and she makes food all the time for people in our house.
I was saying I'll sometimes like do that without being asked, like as an enjoyment thing.
Yeah, for sure. It is less like, I'm trying to get us out the door on time and I'm the little mama, and more like Della's just over there cooking amazing food and asking people if they want some and passing out plates. And she's just a little more free spirited. And at the same time, she can be trusted to get her school done, to know what her assignments are. This wasn't even the case officially when people were asking questions, because they would probably have asked about this. But you actually just took on a position as my personal assistant.
Yep.
How are you liking it so far?
Pretty good. I feel like I could get a hold of things a little better, but I'm working on it.
Well, and I in no way ever expected you to be able to assimilate like 5 different aspects of a fairly multifaceted job in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's
I'm working on it.
You are
working on it.
Yeah, you're hanging in there. Okay, so to kind of squish together a bunch of questions, I guess the overarching thing that people really want to know is, what is your impression of growing up in, quote, such a large family with so many siblings?
It doesn't feel that large when you're actually like in the family. It feels just like any other family out there. It doesn't feel like I'm in a like super large household and that everything's always chaotic and everything. I felt like I had a very personal connection with each of my siblings, rather than some people will view it as very distant if you have a large family.
Or like a herd.
Yeah, like a herd, and we're all the same person or something like that. It doesn't feel like that at all. I'll see other families, I'm like, oh, they're large. I'm like, hold a sec, what am I talking about? Or like, we're missing a couple people and there's still like 6 people in the house or something.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel as large as people might think it does.
And I think that is the impression that I get, and the story that I hear from most people that message me that grew up in large families. Obviously, there's a really wide range of experience. And she and I were talking about this as we were just sitting around the table chatting. There's a really wide range of experience with families that have 2 children, with families that have 3 or 1, or, any number in between ours and a smaller number. I think the assumption is there's some sort of homogenous aspect to all large families. They're kind of all the same. All the kids are a blob. And then they start to individualize as the numbers get smaller. But I have definitely encountered situations in my own life as one of 2, and in other people's lives that I've seen, where even their small numbers meant that they didn't have big connections necessarily with their siblings or their parents. So that was another question. How do you feel? I mean, I think it was kind of a performance like check. How do your parents do about connecting with you individually? But then the question was like, do you feel like you get to connect individually with your parents?
I do. I definitely do. I feel like people always expect it to be some sort of like scattered out thing. I like never talk to my parents, or like they're always focusing on somebody else. But it really isn't like that. And there are times where I won't talk to you for a day. And I mean, I'll also be doing stuff. So it's not even that they're not making time for me. It's like we both have our things going on, and we do connect very, very often throughout our days and stuff. So I don't feel like it's like spread out so they're thin and can't connect with me or anything like that.
Tell them about how we're connecting tomorrow.
We're going to Dallas.
And we're going to do what?
We're going to go to a brunch for it's like a showing of
Faithful, the Women of the Bible. It's a new show coming out. That is not an endorsement of it, y'all. I don't even know if we're going to like it. But I basically got an email asking me to come. And I've been invited to screenings before and never gone, either because they were screenings to something I wasn't interested in, or they were far away in LA. This one's in Dallas, so it's drivable. And I wasn't going to go because it was just me, but I asked them if I could have a +1, and they came back and said I could. So I was like, hey, Della.
We get to go to Dallas.
That's right. You want to get dressed up fancy and go eat yummy food at some bougie place and see if we like the show or not, and then maybe go thrifting afterwards. And I don't know. She said yes.
I mean, I guess I'll just take some time out of my very busy schedule and I don't know, go to Dallas or something.
Well, it is working out because this is technically our spring break week for our homeschool co-op. Okay, it's not technically. It is our spring break week for our homeschool co-op. But we're not taking spring break fully this week because we are doing a basketball competition next week in Missouri. So she just gave me a little bit of a look like, yes, I am taking. I'm like, girl, you need to get your stuff done this week.
I do need to get my stuff done, but I will have to have that done before we go to the tournament anyways. So
yeah. So our family's official spring break is next week because we have a big basketball championship to attend. So it worked out. That was the other deciding factor for me, is that they gave me a +1 that I could bring. And
it's on a Tuesday. We don't have school.
It was on a Tuesday when we didn't have school. Exactly. Okay. So what I hear you saying is that a lot of the assumptions and the stereotypes about big families have not been your personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So some people were asking, like, what's your least favorite and your most favorite aspects of growing up with 9 siblings?
I think I'm going to start with the downer. Least favorite is it can get a little chaotic sometimes. And I'm not saying...
And by chaotic, what do you mean?
Like loud, people be singing. Yes. There'll be children who are crying because they got accidentally punched in the face by their brother and somebody stole their toy, and so they're screaming and attacking each other. It can get chaotic sometimes. That's just what's going to happen. And I'm not a super easily overstimulated person, but sometimes it can get a little bit overstimulating. I think that's
same
in any household, but I think a little more so in one with a lot of children.
And 5 boys in a row at the end.
5 boys in a row. They're going to have some trouble.
Really, truly, that is what has struck me as a mom, is 5 boys in a row is just a new level of energy and noise and movement.
Yes. And sometimes I'll be making dinner because I want to, not because I'm forced to or anything.
Sometimes I ask her to, and she always says yes. So
I enjoy cooking. So, and I just want to focus on making dinner, and they're like, I want some milk. And I'm just like, I just need to make it. But, I mean, they're going to have that in any household, really, at some point. So,
yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because I don't know that I necessarily agree with you. There are probably a lot of households. For example, I never made my brother food. I'm one of 2 kids, and I practically never made dinner. My mom always made it. And I wish I'd made more dinner. I wish I had been able to whip up, like, when I say that Della is a gourmet, she doesn't have any training. We'll get into that in just a second. But she is really, really talented at just knowing things that go together, at being able to look at 3 or 4 different recipes and synthesize aspects of them into something that tastes and looks really good. I didn't have any of that experience when I was 15 years old. And I wish I had, because I had some hurdles to overcome when I first started cooking for myself.
Yes. And then favorite part, I get asked this question all the time, and I feel like usually my response is, well, you're never going to go without a friend. You always have someone. That's not really my favorite part. I think that being in a large family has really prepared me for, like, having a family of my own. I remember one time we were at one of your events. It was the Young Women's Summit.
Yeah, YWLS, I think, yes. In San Antonio.
And there was a woman, there was a Q&A, and there's a woman, and she was like, I want to have a family, but I'm just, like, so scared. And she broke down crying. And I just thought I'd never felt that before. I'd never really been scared to have a family of my own, because I just had always experienced this, and that had never been something that I was like, I'm unprepared for this. I feel like I'm going to get there. I'm not going to know what I'm going to do. I feel like I've been very well prepared for that because of my family.
I love that response, and I did not know she was going to say that. And it actually really makes my mama heart happy, because I don't know that I've ever, like, gone through my day thinking, I hope Della feels prepared to raise her own family. But that's certainly something that we want to come out of our investment in our kids, is that they feel confident in having kids of their own if the Lord wills that. And yet, I'm not kidding that I do hear, again, a huge range of experience from people who've grown up in large families. And some of them are terrified, even having 5, 6, 9 siblings. They're terrified of having their own families, because some of it could be personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Della's also very even-keeled and kind of I'll probably figure it out when I get to it, and she does. So it could be personality, could be just negative experience. Mm-hmm. Which leads us, yet another big family question, because I'm telling you, these are the big ones, to the topic of this big fancy made up word, parentification. So Della did not know what that was when the question was asked.
I had no idea. She was talking about it earlier. I was like, what?
So I explained that there's this really wide spectrum of definitions. In some people's mind, what Della does on a Thursday night when we're on a date, where she makes food for her siblings, helps them get ready for bed, makes sure nobody kills each other.
That is a responsibility.
Yeah, it's a very real
Make
responsibility.
sure the house doesn't get burned down.
Exactly. Wait, didn't you try to burn the house down when you brought it up? So let's tell that story real quick.
That's a more me problem. I set a pan on fire and I did not mean to do it, but we did not burn the house down. So that's a plus.
Yeah, that is a plus. So there are people that would think that her essentially performing the duties of a babysitter on a Thursday night, if we're at date night, is parentification, like period, bar none, if she has to do any of those things ever. There are people that think parentification only happens when you have adults that are basically abdicating all of their responsibilities. And I've heard from people in my DMs that are like, I was genuinely parentified. I was given my siblings to raise, and my parents basically checked out, and they yelled at me if I didn't, quote, do what I was supposed to do, which was in fact what they were supposed to be doing. And there's kind of a range in between. So it's every woman to her own definition type of thing, because it's kind of a made up new concept. So someone asked, what would Della's response to accusations of parentification? I'm assuming they didn't put in large families, but I assume they meant in large families in there.
I don't feel like it's happened to me. I feel like I have been a babysitter at times, like you said, to my siblings, without it being like this big responsibility. I feel it's weighing down on me that I'm like, I have to do everything by myself. I can't ask for help. I've always been able to call y'all and be like, hey, can they watch a movie? Or are they allowed to have ice cream? What time's their bedtime?
Or somebody's melting down.
Yes.
I need you to talk to them, because she's not the ultimate authority, and she
like
knows
they
that.
won't go to bed. I need you to tell them to go to bed.
That has absolutely happened before. I mean, yeah, that's what I expected her to say, because that's been the level of expectation that we have. I did mention that regardless of personality, yes, we are big on taking people's personality in our house into consideration and trying to find things that y'all love so that we can cater to that. But, and I will say that someone asked me a question, and it was something like, what do you do? I haven't looked it up specifically, but it was like, what do you do to connect with Della? Mm-hmm. But I would say that it's what I do to connect with all of my kids. And that is, I pay attention to who you are, what you like. If Della didn't like being around new people and going to Dallas, like not on a whim, and going thrifting, and she would rather just stay home with a book, I wouldn't be like, let's go to Dallas, because.
But obviously I do enjoy that a lot.
Yeah. And I know that. And so just intentionality, paying attention and investing and looking for ways to delight them is, I don't know, that's my advice for every parent of every age, but particularly with teenagers. They start to really need that and notice that and appreciate that, which is fun. But the responsibilities thing, kind of run through what some of your responsibilities are as a member of our household. That like just assumed that because you live here, this is how we work together as a family.
If she needs to go somewhere, I'm gonna help take care of the boys if she asks me to. I need to take care of my laundry and make sure we have like 2 laundry situations. She has a place where she does her laundry, and then we have a workshop because we have a lot of laundry. And my sisters and I are responsible for keeping that clean.
Let's talk about that. How often does that happen without reminding?
Not too often.
And the only reason I insert that is not to shame Della. It's just when she lists this whole set of responsibilities, there's going to be some people that are assuming that you are fulfilling them perfectly. And they're like, going to be like, oh man, my 15-year-old is no. My laundry room is a mess often, and her laundry room is a mess often.
I'm responsible for cleaning our bathroom, but my sisters and I are responsible for like having our spaces cleaned, and we split them up individually. They do our rooms, and I do our bathroom. So that's like our own thing. I'm responsible for cleaning up my space where I do my school, which changes pretty often, but sometimes it
Della migrates around the house and takes like a pile of stuff with her everywhere she goes.
I just have a nest. And it's where I do my school, and sometimes I need to change it so that I could do my school better.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we have, if we want to have an allowance, then we need to do extra jobs around the house. So I take out the trash and I clean the fridge every week to get my allowance. And just kind of overall pick up, making sure people don't kill each other sometimes. Yeah, that's around it.
Yeah, and then lately, I mean, it's been a huge blessing to me that she loves to cook, because lately it's not an uncommon week that she'll cook dinner once, maybe twice. I would say twice a week is not the most common, but it's happening more and more. And it is, like I said, I have a book deadline in a week. 1 week, y'all. We're gonna make it. It's gonna be fine. And if I've often talked about how I said she's even keeled. She's also just cheerful and has a really sweet nature and helpful, and you're not combative. She doesn't talk back. You're just a chill kid, and you have been since you were born.
Just a chill guy.
Yeah, just a chill guy. And so if I'm like, Della, I am slammed. I'm working on a chapter. Can you make dinner tonight? She can, like from start to finish. We'll look in the fridge and see what's there. I don't even have to tell her. In fact, she prefers that I don't tell her.
Yeah, I prefer to just do whatever I make. I mean, people tend to enjoy what I make, so just make whatever.
Yeah. Well, and also, I have the typical mom thing of like the 25 to 30 staples that I've made for 20 years because I don't even have to look at a recipe to do them. And Della wants to I
want to make something new. I'm going to try out more new recipes.
You do have a little bit more time freedom to...
I feel like I make lunch more often than I make dinner. And I make dinner 1-2 times a week, but I make lunch almost every single day, except on days when I'm busy, and people will tend to eat some of my lunch, whatever I make. So
yeah, she's always in there making a gigantic mess, but mostly cleaning up after herself.
I think it's mostly clean.
And then there's 3 other people making gigantic messes too on the same... I'm glad our island is huge because it is covered. By the time
I can survive with a small table.
No, well, we might have to learn some clean as you go skills.
Maybe,
but it gets cleaned up, and like she said, she offers things to other people. So I will often say that some of my least favorite questions are the too vaguely worded ones. In other words, the questions where it's hey, what would you tell a first-time mom? And I want to go, about what? There's so many different things I would tell a first-time mom. And I know people are just thinking your top 3. But when you've been a parent for 20 years, narrowing it down to the top 3 is you would just be pray a lot, pay attention to your, So we had one of those questions.
For me?
Yes, for you.
Oh.
And it was, and I mentioned it to you, it was the idea of what advice would you offer? And it was 2-pronged. One was, what advice would you offer to parents of preteens and teens? What do they need to know? And so we'll start with that.
Oh gosh. Like my mom said, pay attention to what their personality is. I mean, you should do that with all your children. But I think with preteens, you need to do that. Or, teens and preteens, because, they are changing, and you'll start to see things that they do naturally because their personality might be heightened a little bit. So you know what to expect, I'd say. I think when I became a preteen, I started spending more time off of my own a little bit, because I do have a tendency to want to be more independent, or just like, go my own way. And then if someone needs me to do something, I'll figure it out. But I don't feel like sometimes I can fail to reach out. And I think something that my mom did was like intentionally include me, because I can tend to just, go off my own way and forget to actually like, talk to someone, even though I am a people person. And so I think, yeah, pay attention to who they are as a person, and make sure you're, noticing if they need help, like guiding somewhere.
Yeah. We talked about this last week, Ruthine and I did, but this idea of expectations, and how if you're constantly conveying to someone, whether it's a preteen, teenager, your employee, your spouse, whoever, that whomever I should say, that you expect them to fail, that you expect them to be a hot mess, that you expect them to be, in the case of teenagers and preteens, totally over the top emotionally, having no self-control, all of those things, then it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You feel like that's true?
Yeah, I feel like if I was just expected to not do anything, I mean, I probably wouldn't want to do anything, because, I mean, that's not expected of me. Why would I do it? It feels like I'm being kind of like left alone. It feels like if you're not expecting something of someone, that's almost, you're not loving them the right way, because, I mean, you don't, when you love someone, you want the best for them, and you want them to grow in their life, and you want them to become a better person, and to have no expectations for maybe your child. You're making room for them to fail, like, more than to succeed.
Yeah,
You're
that's well put.
letting them kind of ignore their health and
Their habits
their
that they
habits.
might need to work on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you give a child a bunch of cookies and say, well, I don't expect you to eat healthy, they're going to get fat, and that's not good for them. So, yeah.
Rot their teeth out, have insulin resistance. Yeah, all the things. And then I said this on a different podcast the other day, but there was a lady that I was talking to at an event, and this lady has a lot of wisdom. She's actually well known. She writes books, all these things, but she doesn't have any children of her own. And she was talking about how she was kind of warning parents of how preteens and teens will go off the rails. If you can see Della's face, you can see her like squinting and making a face like she's like, what? It is a common story. I can't argue with that. It's not uncommon for there to be a period where, even to a lesser degree than something like getting into drugs, a kid is going to not seem like him or herself anymore. But I ended up having this conversation with this person and saying, like, I don't know that that's helpful to tell parents and teens, because she said she would tell preteens the same thing, kind of like, you're going to go crazy for a while. It's okay. You'll come back. If someone had said that to you, what would you feel like your response would have been?
I would feel very weirded out. For one, I would be like, what? I mean, I'm still, even if my hormones are whack, I'm still the person controlling me. I'm still me, and I can, even if I feel like my emotions are overdone, you still have some control over that, even if it's a small way. And I don't feel like being like, oh, you're just going to lose control over everything. That would make me feel scared.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think this person's intentions were pure and that she was trying to be helpful. I just, in this particular instance, don't feel like, one, there is a global experience that every single preteen or teen goes through the same struggles, similar maybe, but not the exact same. It depends a lot on your home environment as well. Not entirely. This is not blame casting, but it can depend very much on your home environment, on your personality, on, the level that your hormones go wackadoodle or not. I can say for me personally, I was, of the two siblings, the child that never went particularly wackadoodle. I didn't have a super rebellious streak, and and if someone's listening to this and like, good for you, Abby. No, it's just a fact. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to call it the grace of God, but it just is. And at least part of that, I had a friend say to me the other day, this friend, that's a grown adult, that said, basically, I was the steady one because my brother really struggled. And I felt like I needed to be steady for my parents. And I kind of felt the same way. So there's factors like that. But I appreciate your pointing out that you have some agency.
I remember one time you told me I was like crying, and I was like, oh, I was overreacting about something, and I was just not in a good headspace. And you told me you need to realize whether it's your real emotions or like your hormones talking for you. And I feel like I've begun to realize that more if I'm like not feeling the best and I'm snappy, and I'll realize this is not really, I'm overreacting for one, and I need to like take a step back, and I'll usually do something that I find calms myself. Like if I'm snapping at people, I'll like get my headphones and listen to rain sounds because that relaxes me a lot. And I'll just like do that and clean my bathroom so that I'm not around someone and I just have time to like cool off and be like, these are not my real emotions, and calm down, and then just kind of like get back into it. And some days it won't work as well, and some days it will. But yes.
I think there's a ton of wisdom in that. And I think grown women, myself included, sometimes would do well to pay attention to where you are in your cycle and what hormonal like week you're on, because sometimes, you want to kill people. You feel like pretty
probably not the best time to kill people, or if there's any situation which you need to be killing people at all. It's probably not the time to be making big arguments with people when your emotions are off kilter. Yeah.
And I like what you said about the conscious decision to put yourself in a position of regaining self-control. Could be putting your headphones on and listening to rain sounds and cleaning your bathroom. It could be quoting scripture to yourself, like, where words are many, sin is not absent. Or a foolish man makes his vexation known at once. In other words, if I'm going to talk constantly and be mad about it, which, I mean, we all do. I do sometimes. Ask her about yesterday when she hadn't taken out the trash. And I let that affect how we talked about emails and work stuff afterwards. And I had to apologize. That is another thing that I will say, circling back to the question about some of the best things moms can do to connect with their teens or children of any age. Be willing to apologize when you mess up. Agreed?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, we're all people and we all make mistakes. And it's not like you're above your child in making those. You're not, just because you're the parent, you're not above apologizing. You're not better than them. You're not. Yeah.
So you don't feel like, because I think this is a huge fear. I could be wrong about this. I could have forgotten an instance, but to my knowledge, and my mom is fantastic. Softa is wonderful and was a really, really good mom and really kind to me, and probably didn't have a ton to apologize for, but I cannot remember her ever apologizing to me. And again, maybe I've locked it out. Who knows? But I also think she comes from a generation that saw apologizing to your child as an admission of lack of authority or of weakness, something like that. And so I'm assuming what you're saying is, when I apologize to you, that doesn't lessen your view.
Yes. That doesn't make me feel like I'm the one in authority over you. It makes me feel as if you care about us and you aren't putting yourself over us in a way that is kind of like a demanding overlord kind of way. You are in authority, but you also have the humility to, apologize and admit that you were wrong.
That's the goal for sure. Yeah, that's the goal. Humility for sure is the only way to lead well. And let me just point out that I'm so glad that she said that she sees it that way. But there are plenty of times that I'm not very humble. And then I get to be humble and apologize. So it's not always perfect by any stretch. Okay, so I was going to switch gears back to, I mean, this does sort of track with talking about authority and humility and how those two should go hand in hand. But someone wanted to know how you feel about the rules we have set up for you.
I feel like they're good, and a lot of the times I can find a reason. And even if I don't necessarily agree, you are still my parent, and you have that authority over me to make that rule. And I feel like if there is a rule that I'm confused about why it exists, I can talk to you and ask about it.
Yeah, a big one for my kids is sleepovers. We don't do sleepovers, and that is on matter of principle. But I think one of the things that makes that difficult for them to understand and to abide by, even though y'all actually have, I don't know about your age, but Evie and Nola for sure have quite a few families that also don't do sleepovers. So that maybe makes it easier. 'Cause there's 3 or 4 families that are in their age range that also don't do it. So it's not feeling as if, well, they get to and I don't. But I think one of the things that makes it difficult, even as a parent, to stick to the principle of that particular one is that our friend group is very sweet. And I don't have specific, obvious concerns. And yet it is something that we have prayerfully landed on. So that's one that she'll ask me about.
Yes.
Any other specific ones? Because I'm sure people are like, what are the rules your parents have for you?
Trying to think. I mean, there are ones about modesty, but typically I'm like, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, those are pretty common sense.
Yeah, and they're it's not like we have like straight like ground rules, but there are things like probably shouldn't wear that because it's not just well, I mean like I'm not gonna be wearing a bikini or anything anywhere.
And I will say that Della every now and then will come down and I'll go, no, and she goes, okay, and changes. So that's one. What's another one?
Um, we have a curfew sometimes that gets extended for certain events, but I mean we're not gonna be coming home super late or anything.
Although, I mean, you regularly have been, because she rides with her brother sometimes and he's 18 and his curfew is later. She's gotten home at like 11:30, 11:45 recently on the weekends, which is pushing it.
Yeah, but trying to think. I mean, we don't watch R-rated movies in our house or anything like that.
Yeah, we have media standards. We have just code of conduct standards, the way we speak.
I just feel like it's common sense a little bit. We don't talk back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question, and I'll be very interested to hear your answer. So a lot of times I get asked, or someone will say, either siblings are fighting all the time and never get along, not occasional fights as will obviously happen, but are just at each other's throats all the time. How do I fix that? Or my kid is speaking to me very disrespectfully. What do I do? And I, among other things, will say you need to make that kind of language between siblings and between parents and children not an option. What do you think the next question back to me is?
I also think where are they getting that from? Because unless you're speaking like that to your husband, or there's something else like that going on in your family, they're seeing it in some way among their friends, among their relatives. I mean, if you say we're not talking back to each other and that's just never an example in your house, they're not going to suddenly start doing it. It's not going to be just come out of nowhere. It has to come from somewhere. And so that would be good to figure out what that is and maybe self-examine and see if you're the one doing that.
That's a good note. Yeah, the question is definitely like, how do you do that? And I think that Della is touching on some of those things. You are very careful with the type of speech that you allow in your home, the type of speech that you allow yourself to use for your children, and the type of speech that you allow them to use toward you. I think the nitty gritties of it is, it's like, well, I'm not yelling at my kid, but he's yelling at me. regardless of where it comes from, they're wondering how you nip that in the bud. How would you say that happens here? Y'all have actually never yelled at me.
Yeah, we are all not very rebellious, I'd say. Well, there's some of us are a bit of a troublemaker, but we're not very angry people. So, I'd say if we were talking back to you, you just kind of like shut it down immediately. There's no allowance for that in our household. There's no, you're allowed to say biting things. We can like approach you respectfully and like about something you're doing wrong, but there is no like shut up or anything like that, because that's just not respectful at all. If there is something that I'd say like you were doing that was like not good, I feel like we could approach you and say, hey, this needs to be changed.
Yeah, and they have. I mean, there have been times when it was like, how you worded that hurt my feelings, or it made me, bristle or whatever. And I have to take that into account and say, could I have done that better? Listen, sometimes parents, your kid will come to you and they have it completely backwards. That you have been reasonable and they are still like, you are picking on me, because that's how we can be sometimes. And you have to either search your heart and say, no, I was reasonable and I was kind, and say, I'm sorry that it came across that way, but I'm going to hold the line. Or most of the time, if your kid comes to you and gives a respectful response that's like, I just felt like you were unkind or hurtful or too harsh, you need to examine your heart and go, actually, you've got a good point. I did want to comment on something she said, because I do think, this is such a hard line for me to walk as someone with a podcast and books and things like that, because Della is saying most of us aren't angry or rebellious or all those things. The question, of course, is chicken or egg. Is it because y'all have even-tempered personalities? We actually already know the answer is no. At least not completely. Mm-hmm. Is it because I've trained you all perfectly? We already know the answer is no, mm-hmm. At least not completely. There is going to be this tug, this give and take, this push and pull of, it is your job as a parent to hold that line. And exactly what Della said, should it start to go there, like before it's ever gotten to the point where your child is screaming like profanities in your face, there was probably an on-ramp, mm-hmm. before that took off. Once it's there, it's going to be a lot harder to put back in the box. Wow, that was some really mixed metaphors.
On-ramps and boxes.
Yeah. But if you can notice tendencies or lead ups that direction and be very quick to say, hey, your tone is starting to sound this, mm-hmm. or your wording, like, I think you need to try again.
Yes.
Run that
back. It's not the way we speak here.
Right. Then you do head a lot of things off at the pass, because I will say that Della was always going to naturally be pretty evenly killed. Again, from the time she was a baby, chill. Nola is very sweet and even-tempered, mm-hmm. and easygoing now in a lot of ways, was not as a toddler. And a couple of our others, like you could go through the list and be like, this one really struggles with high emotions, or this, that, or the other. And yet the same conclusion has been reached. There is a standard of conduct in speech. Some is acceptable, some is not. We try to head off the unacceptable at the pass, and we try to root it all in scripture. Mm-hmm. And I know that was a lot of my talking, but I kind of just wanted to, for the parents listening, I'm loving you're getting to know Della, but also since this is my podcast and this is my episode as well, I wanted to put that in there because it is such a common question of like, wait a minute, what does that practically look like? Mm-hmm. How would I actually make that happen?
I think it's also kind of basic manners. We've lost that a lot these days. People just letting their kid do whatever. Just teach your child that there's some things you can't say. There's some things that you can't act towards people. And that's just like not allowed. That's not something that should ever be allowed. Even if there is a situation, and when someone is doing wrong to you, there is a way to go about it that is the right way, rather than being angry and hateful and just spitting out profanities.
Yeah, or cutting language or personal insults. Again, jumping in here, that what she's saying is something we have done a lot. Okay, here's a question for you, because this wasn't on the list, but I get asked this a lot, and I would love to know your take. People are like, when do you step in to moderate things as a parent, and when do you let the kids duke it out? What's your opinion on that?
Oh,
Not necessarily when do I, but when should?
I think there's a certain level of common sense, and just if something is getting to the point where they're being personally insulting, when it's getting to the point where it's very personal to someone, and you're just going at each other with knives, then you should probably be like,
Hopefully
okay,
not literally.
hopefully not literally, plastic knives. Then you should be like, hey, we need to take a step back. There has been wrong done here, but this is not acceptable to act this way towards each other. And I think if it's like minor and like, you stole my hairbrush, no, I didn't, then you can let them sort it out among themselves if they're not being very personally like insulting. And yes. And then there's times where like maybe you let them sort them out and then be like, hey, y'all need to get along better. At least make a note about it if it's like not like the biggest thing ever. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think you actually described my policy exactly. And I'm assuming that's because you've seen it modeled, which is I will literally stand in my laundry room that has a window, and I will listen to whatever's going on downstairs if it has become elevated voices. And after 20 years of parenting, I mean, even before then, but after 20 years of parenting particularly, I can tell by the tone of voice and what's happening where this is going. And so my goal, if I need to intervene, is to intervene before someone has completely lost their cool and has to be pulled back from the edge of hysteria or something like that. Because it's a whole lot easier to get them to walk it back and run it back and say, try asking that again. Or what you just said is not factual and you know it. Like you just stated that in the most inflammatory way possible. And no, I don't say that to my 7-year-olds. I use a different word. But, to my teens, it's like you're wording that in a way to make yourself, to set yourself up as the victim here and make that person look like the oppressor. And that's not entirely true. Right? And then if I were to say that to Della, she would be like,
okay, gotta self-examine now.
Yeah.
And figure out I think just kind of set a standard of like, don't accuse someone of doing wrong, but also know if you've done wrong.
So like maybe look at the log in your own eye before trying to get the speck out of your brother's eye. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Always a good idea.
Yes. And if you are, I feel like if you are arguing with a sibling, have it not be that you're like, well, you're always taking my stuff. Don't make very broad and untrue statements. That will just escalate everything eternally.
Eternally. That's a broad statement.
Well,
it's true. It makes it,
yes.
it escalates things.
And be very like, okay, well, that's true, but you still did this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same.
And I'll try to stop doing that, but this is also a problem, and this is what we're trying to address.
Yeah, and Della's level-headedness helps her in that, because I actually, again, I have no trouble eavesdropping as a mom. I feel like it's like part of my job. And half the time I can't help it because I'm in the closet and they're in there, having a disagreement about who should have cleaned what. And I will literally hear Della. So of the 3 girls, there's 3 very different personality types. And so there will be one that is making the global accusations. There will be one that is quietly looking back and forth between the 2, worried. And there will be one that will be saying, okay, you have a point, but also that's not even what we're talking about. So calm down, which in the history of calming down, no one has ever calmed down when someone said calm down. but it's worth a shot. And a lot of times it does resolve itself, you know? And this is at 15, 13, and 13. This is not at 5, 3, and 3.
I feel like we have had more arguments. I have had more arguments with my sisters in the past, especially one of them, but we have gotten better at that recently. Like taking in each other's different personalities and feelings into account and not making global statements. But I feel like because there are such differing personalities between us, it can get easy to kind of just about their guts. Like, no! But yeah, we've gotten better at us understanding each other.
Yeah. And I appreciate, because I have said publicly many times before that it is not the norm in our house for there to be fighting all the time. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with this statement?
Yes. And I feel like that has become more and more so recently.
Yeah.
As we've gotten older.
Right. But I think my point in saying that, because who knows? Who knows how much fighting is going on behind the door when mom's not eavesdropping close enough to hear and step in, because it happens for sure. And I'm aware of that. But my point has been the culture of your home to be one of open dispute and name calling and bickering and biting at each other in open spaces all the time. Like that's the norm, because that's what I'm hearing a lot of.
I don't think our house has ever been like that. There have been points in my life where I have had more disputes with like particular siblings, and we've just kind of been like angry at each other. But that has usually not gone on for very long and has evened out and has never been very like relationship ending. We've always like
not very relationship ending.
Not relationship ending. It's hard to have a grudge against your siblings when you live in the same home. So we'll bicker earlier about, I don't know, using makeup and messing it up. And then later I'll be like, do you want to watch a movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to go get some popcorn?
Right. These are your built-in friends. Mm-hmm. And it has been cool to see that become more and more true as y'all get older. And so I appreciate your feedback on this, because I think it's good to see it from the child's perspective and the parents. The parents who is going, here's the culture I'm setting, and the child who's like, yeah, but sometimes you're still irritated. Of course you are. Uncle Shay and I were like at each other's throats.
Pencils in the legs.
Yeah. If you've read Emma's for Mama. In fact, someone messaged me the other day and they were like, listen, my kids fight sometimes, but at least none of them have ever, that's the right way of putting it. None of them have ever stabbed another sibling in the leg with a pencil. And by the way, I'm the one that did the stabbing in my brother's.
She's the violent one.
I'm the violent one, apparently. Yes. I'm everything I tell my kids not to be. And then I told you I was like this even-keeled, non-rebellious kid. But man, I'd had it.
I think, that's just a note. I think if you step in on all your children's arguments, they're never going to be able to understand how to have a argument that is, not biting. They're going to escalate it, and they're not going to have that stopper, especially when they grow up. They're not going to be able to, stop it because you were always the one doing it for them. They're not going to know how to, have a confrontation without it being something wild and aggressive.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I think that is something that every parent and child could take into consideration. Just learning to self-regulate and self-examine and take responsibility for your actions instead of just reacting constantly. That's huge. Okay, we'll end with this, since this is looking forward to the future. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I've enjoyed chatting with you. Can't wait for tomorrow.
Yes. Anthropology sales rack.
Anthropology sales rack. This girl is after my own heart. People were wanting to know if you have any plans for your future.
Currently, I am thinking about doing a culinary course somewhere because I enjoy cooking a lot. And I feel like I could make that a career very easily. And even if I don't, that's still a skill I could take into my own home and be the mom who cooks really amazing meals. I'm thinking of getting a 2-year degree from a local community college. And I do want to get married and start a family at some point if that's what God wills for me. And yeah, hopefully I've been thinking about this more recently, possibly doing like a study abroad kind of thing, maybe for like a year.
Ooh.
I think that would be interesting to try. I've never said that before.
That sounds interesting. Yes, this is the first I've heard of that, but it does sound interesting.
Yes, it does sound interesting to possibly look into. But
and it'd be fun to learn other cultures' food.
Yes, and get to, I don't know, go to Italy and make the perfect pasta.
Yeah. That's a good life goal right there. I will eat your perfect pasta.
Yes, well, you can eat my perfect pasta. So.
Sounds great. Well, Della, thank you so much for being here on my show. I appreciate your taking the time. We've got to go make dinner. I'm making dinner tonight. I've got to go make dinner.
I can help you with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, guys. I hope you appreciated Della's responses. I think there are so many moms out there that are just desperate for assurance that you can enjoy your teenagers. And Della is living proof that you can. I have 5 of them. I enjoy all of them, including Della. And we are going to sign off and go hit up those Anthropology sales racks tomorrow. Yes. I will see you next week. If you enjoy the M is for Mama podcast, I would be so honored if you would subscribe and follow along, maybe share with friends or even leave a review. And if you want more content on motherhood and biblical responses to cultural issues, be sure to follow along on Instagram at m.is.for.mama.